Hello everyone and welcome to this TBC presentation. My name is Andrew Price. I'm with NuWave Technologies and today I'm joined by Gustavo Martinez from RedLink in Argentina. And today we're going to give a brief LightWave introduction and then Gustavo is going to take over and get into some customer use cases explaining how they've used both LightWave Server and LightWave Client to modernize their Base24 application. Just a little bit about NuWave before we continue. We've been in business since 1999, focusing exclusively on NonStop middleware and NonStop integration. We've had a couple of SOAP-based products in the market for many years, and more recently we introduced our REST-based products, LightWave Server and LightWave Client, that we're going to be talking about today. LightWave Server is server-side middleware, meaning that the NonStop application acts as the server or the REST service provider. It allows you to expose your NonStop applications as REST services with no changes to the application. LightWave Client is client-side middleware, allowing your NonStop or your NonStop applications to act as a REST client or a REST service consumer, if you like, allowing you to access REST services both from within your enterprise and externally from the NonStop application itself directly. So LightWave Server in a little more detail allows you to securely expose your NonStop applications as services, and this can allow your customers and business partners to place orders, check inventory, or even make payments. And you can use existing client applications or develop new applications that utilize that valuable information that's stored on your NonStop, once again, without changing the NonStop in any way. Here's a brief architectural overview of LightWave Server. On the right-hand side, we see the NonStop server, LightWave Server running on the NonStop. It runs under Guardian, no OSS required, no need for any additional software at all. And LightWave Server here is sitting in front of a pathway server or another process, a Guardian or OSS process. And LightWave Server is communicating with those backend applications using inter-process messages or IPMs that are the format of the IPM that those applications are expecting to receive, hence the no need for application changes. On the left-hand side, we have a variety of REST clients. In fact, any type of REST client is supported by LightWave Server. The REST client sends a JSON over HTTP, JSON being short for JavaScript object notation, over HTTP request to LightWave Server. LightWave Server terminates that request, handles the HTTP, and translates the JSON request into that IPM that the backend application is expecting to receive. So the backend application receives the request, processes it, returns a response back to LightWave Server, and LightWave Server converts that back into a JSON response. And once again, wide variety of REST clients. Some of those are listed. You could even go so far as to use an Amazon Echo or a other voice type of a device. LightWave Server allows you to respond faster to changing business demands by allowing your applications to be accessed as services. You'll find that the client developers are able to move much more quickly than they would otherwise be able to if they were having to deal with proprietary pathway or ISO 8583 type message formats. In the same way, you can integrate much more quickly with third-party applications. And probably most importantly, you can leverage your existing NonStop applications and the valuable data that they contain without changing the applications. Here's another example of how LightWave can be used with this, in this case, with Base24. And we're going to hear a bit more about Base24 when Gustavo takes over. But really very little change as far as the overall architecture. As you can see, the same sorts of clients on the left-hand side, sending in JSON messages that LightWave Server receives, transforms those into an IPM that XPNet and Base24 are happy to receive, and Base24 processes that transaction request as it would with any other transaction request, returning a response to LightWave Server to be returned back to the calling client. Another use case that we're seeing becoming more and more popular is for the NonStop applications to work with an API gateway. There's a wide variety of API gateways out there these days. DataPower, MuleSoft are some of the more popular ones, and they're becoming very popular within our customer base. And once again, in this situation, the API gateway just sends a REST request up to LightWave Server. LightWave Server really doesn't care whether it's a direct REST client or an API gateway. It's all the same to it. But in this way, you can have your API gateway access NonStop transactions and NonStop applications in the same way that it would access any other API service within the enterprise, really bringing your NonStop into that API gateway architecture. Moving on to LightWave Client, as I mentioned earlier, LightWave Client allows your NonStop applications to act as a REST client or a REST service consumer, meaning that you can access remote REST services directly from the NonStop. There's many different REST services now available. I think over 20,000 public APIs at last count. And using LightWave Client, you can bring the power of those services directly into your NonStop applications. But you can also integrate with services within your network. Many of our customers are moving to REST as a common language within the enterprise, and it's important to be able to support REST and integrate with REST services where needed. Or you might use services provided by your business partners as well. Many different potential use cases for LightWave Client. So the LightWave Client architecture, reversed from LightWave Server. On the left-hand side, we have the NonStop server and the NonStop applications on the left, communicating with LightWave Client using an IPM. LightWave Client converts that IPM into either a JSON or XML request over HTTP and sends it to the REST service provider, who processes that request and returns a response that LightWave Client turns back into an IPM and returns back to the calling application. And the reason that we support XML, some REST services are provided via XML, and in the case of LightWave Client, we need to consume whatever service is being made available by the service provider. If they have deemed that that service will be XML formatted, we need to support it, and we can certainly do that. Similarly to LightWave Server, LightWave Client also supports API gateways, once again, really without caring whether it's an API gateway or not. In this way, though, you can have your NonStop applications consume any API that might be available on your enterprise API gateway. Once again, our customers are moving towards this type of a model whereby developers make available all supported services within the enterprise within that API gateway. And for the NonStop to be able to access those services, it needs to be able to consume them in the way that they're being made available by the gateway, typically almost always via REST. So same architecture as in the previous slide, but in this case, LightWave Client happens to be consuming a service that's provided by the API gateway or potentially via some endpoint beyond the gateway, but of course that's transparent to LightWave Client and to the NonStop application. Some of the features of both LightWave Client and LightWave Server, they adhere to NonStop fundamentals, scalability, fault tolerance, etc. They run under Guardian. There's no requirement for OSS, no requirement for an additional web server. They run on all supported NonStop hardware and NonStop operating systems. They run as a fault-tolerant process pair. And LightWave Server supports, comprehensively supports TMF. One of the product's key features, really, or key differentiators, is the monitoring diagnostic capabilities that they include, including HTTP server logging, process event logging, and diagnostic logging. And you can also set up user-defined measure counters to determine exactly how the product is performing in your own environment. They are also facilitating rapid development because they're standards-based and they're very easy to use. The products include a browser-based user interface that allows for very rapid deployment of new services, and you can be up and running very quickly with them as a result. Okay, with that, I'm going to hand over to Gustavo. Gustavo, thank you.
Thank you, Andrew, and hello, everyone. Thanks for watching our presentation today. This is Gustavo Martinez from RedLink, Buenos Aires, Argentina, and I'm here to present how we integrate Base24 with LightWave products. This is my agenda for today. First, I'll talk a little bit about RedLink history. After that, I'll explain to you how we started to use LightWave products. Then I will explain how we integrate Base24 with a LightWave product. It is an example of how we use LightWave Client, basically. Then I will explain our in-progress implementation, which is not ready on prod yet, but it's going to be an example of how we use LightWave Server. I'll give you a summary. I will explain the key successful driver from our point of view. We'll share with you future thoughts or ideas. Just briefly, who is RedLink? RedLink is a company that was founded in 1988. I have been using NonStop since the very beginning. We are on one hand a transactional switch that drive more than 10,000 ATMs that are connected directly to our network, and on the other hand is a technological services provider for the financial industry. We work with more than 60 banks, both public and private, but mostly public. We are able to manage more than 35 million transactions of peak days. And for Christmas this year, for example, we expect to have more than 43 million transactions. We have more than 27 million of users, keeping in mind that the population of Argentina is around 45 million of people. You can have an idea of the size of the company. We're using Base24 Classic and EPS. We are headquartered in Buenos Aires, Argentina. Just a bit about myself. I have over than 23 years of experience on the NonStop platform. I have a computational science degree. Of those 23 years, I've been working at RedLink for over 19 years, playing different roles like being a NonStop system programmer, being in charge of the innovation lab, work with the Base24 team, and today I'm the head of the core platform engineering. The following 3 slides will explain how we started to use NuWave product. Back in 2017, so 3 years ago, we have the following graph. We are still using our multi-vendor solution on our ATM. The multi-vendor solution allows us to, at some point in the transaction flow, to call different web services. So one of those services needed to access information that was stored on a very important file of Base24 called cardholder account file. So we developed a pathway server that is going to be used for retrieving information from there. So we decided an interprocess message, an structure, very simple structure, for the communication between NonStop SOAP, that is going to be the middleware at that point, to expose that information as a web service. But we started to have some questions from the developers and requests. They say, why don't we start to use REST instead of SOAP? So we started to use LightWave Server here. We called NuWave. We installed the product in 2 days' time. It was a straightforward implementation, and we were able to do it. We didn't have to change any source code. We maintain exactly the same interprocess message detained here than here. So the implementation was very easy. With that, we learned how to integrate an existing implementation using REST. A year later, I was in charge of the innovation lab, and by then we were doing some tests with Alexa, which is a virtual assistant of Amazon that contains artificial intelligence technology. And we want to talk with Alexa for asking information that was stored on Base24. So the idea was to configure this graph, and we have 2 challenges here. On the left side, we didn't have any idea how to do that. But with the help of a NuWave, we were able to do it. They send us explanation of how to do that, how to integrate AWS with LightWave Server in a very easy way. Then we have the second challenge, that it was how to integrate LightWave Server with XPNet. Those 2 middleware needed to interchange information. So we found 2 approaches. We found a product from ACI, native from ACI, called PWS, that allows you, if configured properly, to send a message to a pathway server. And if the station is configured in the correct way, you will receive that message through a station. One inside of XPNet, you can do whatever you want to transform that message into an internal transaction. The other approach was to develop a pathway server that we call it by then a bridge process, that was in the middle of those two middlewares. And the idea of that server was to generate a connection using a socket with XPNet. Both approaches working fine. And again, LightWave Server allow us to integrate in a very easy way different kind of services, in this case, AWS. A couple of months later, the same year, we started to use LightWave Client. We have the following graph here, where we needed to contact outside of the NonStop two web services that were running on Linux. So we create the following architecture. We install two instances of LightWave Client here and here. We develop a very simple satellite process. We send an extractor that contain login information to send to the first web service, and with that we obtain a token that was sent to the second instance of our client, and so we're able to access to the second web service, and with that we obtain the desired response here in red. This proof of concept didn't progress beyond this test, but it was very handy to understand an approach for integrating these two worlds, NonStop and the open platform using REST. After many proof of concepts, I have shown a few of them, we were ready for taking off to production. The following slides will show you what we did. The following 4 slides will describe how we implement, how we integrate Base24 with LightWave Client. Base24 doesn't have a web service module for consuming web service module natively. By native, I mean a module that start to interchange information inside of the XPNet, which is the middleware of Base24, and start to interchange what is called an STM message, standard internal message format, and at some point access to the outside world using JSON or XML. We were having some pressure for our customer banks and also for the open platform team that they were exposing many REST and SOAP web services by them. So we decided to do it, to create from scratch a homemade module using the same concept as a Base24 ISO module. It means using a station or TCP IP socket, which is the station is an abstraction that XPNet uses for interchanging information with the outside world. But soon, after a couple of years, we realized that this wasn't a very good solution. We had some problems. We realized that solution, that approach, had a couple of problems. Let me explain them. Initially, we realized that it not well designed for the long term. But for the short term, it was a temporary solution. One thing was parsing an ISO 8583 type of message, which is very well known in the financial industry. And a completely different thing is try to parse JSON or XML tags. That is much complicated. We ended up hard coding a lot of messages inside of the code. The synchronous nature of a web service blocked the socket of the station. When you send a request, you had to await for an answer, and during that period of time you cannot send another message. So it wasn't a multi-threading solution. Another important issue was related to the TLS or secure socket layer. At some point there were critical information that our banks or internal web service provider was exposing to us, and that channel should be encrypted totally from XPNet until the other end. We didn't have the correct module for encrypting that information. We solved that using a third-party product, and we were able to do it, but then we create more problems, more configuration steps that made the troubleshooting even more complex. There wasn't a centralized database. We have distributed and script files that were storing different kind of information for this kind of consumption. As for example, on one script file, we have the names of the web services. On the other, we have the relation between the web services names and the station that we were going to use for consuming that information. Last but not the least, the regression time. We have very important regression time every time that we added a new web service to that module. So we have to do a decision here. Clearly, or we have two approaches here. Or we solve all of those problems, or we started to think in a different way. This is what we did. This slide shows the new approach. The new approach using LightWave Client. How is the integration between Base24 and LightWave Client? We create a new satellite pros called SatW that incorporate dynamic link libraries, a technique we have been using here for many years so far. DLLs are responsible for making the conversion from STM to the structure needed by the LightWave Client in order to consume the web service. LightWave Client will receive that information and will convert to JSON and will access to the web service, and vice versa. The idea of using DLL is very important because it allows us to reduce the regression time. It's just a matter of testing that unique DLL that is going to implement a specific web service and not the whole module. So that's very important. Regarding the SatW process, we can say that it is written in C++. It's highly customizable because of the uses of DLLs. Regarding audit files are a way that XPNet provides to the environment that allows you to capture all of the information that is interchanged between different Base24 or different XPNet modules. So we do not have that information using this approach, but we replace that with dialog logs here on LightWave Client. The considerations are exactly the same on production, so you don't have to turn them on for many times because you will have some performance issues. It's the same on XPNet than on LightWave Client. Regarding LightWave Client, we can say that they are running under pathway. So we have a robust and scalable and a fault-tolerant solution using this approach. We found the following advantages using this new approach. Initially, we will concentrate exclusively on new transactions. We are not going to parse any more JSON or XML tags. We are not going to deal anymore with HTTPS or certificates or anything that is between a web service and the other end. That is going to be now the LightWave Client shop. We improve the troubleshooting time, basically because the administration now is much simpler. The information is all centralized in a GUI or in a very easy to use command line. We improve the time to market using the DLL approach and also saving a lot of coding hours. It allows us to focus on another more important issues. We're going to let NuWave to deal with the state of the art of the web services. We are just going to concentrate on new projects, new transactions. The following two slides will show you how you could integrate Base24, a part of it, with LightWave Server. Here we have a batch module and mature module that runs very well, but it is a batch module that interchange information with the security module of Base24 called TSS, Transaction Security Services. And it turned out that we need that information using a REST interface. That solution should be done very quickly using a robust and scalable approach. This is what we did. We readapt that module and convert it using minor changes into a pathway server. 99% of the code will remain the same and doing exactly the same job as before, interchanging information with the security module of Base24. Once that is done, we design a new contract, a new structure to interchange between LightWave Server and that pathway server. With that, anything is prepared for exposing a REST API using LightWave Server. LightWave Server is a fault-tolerant solution. It's also scalable, the same as Pathway. So we have a robust, scalable, and fault-tolerant solution using this approach in a very simple way, the most important in a short period of time. As you could see, we have been using their product for many years so far. We trust on them, we know how to use for consumption or for exposing a REST API on the NonStop side. We have many more examples of how to use their product. We are thinking in new ideas, as for example, expose an API for executing commands to the ATMs, or expose another REST API and allow our customers, banks, to access critical information on demand and not at cutover time, for example. Another important feature we are using are user measure counters. That feature is incorporated into LightWave, and you can easily integrate with your monitoring tools. For example, you can determine how many pass sends per second is the product doing, or which is the service that is most consumed. Also, you can use a new feature of the product that allows you to send information to Splunk or ELK based on the HTTP response call, for example. To sum up my presentation, I would like to say that the best word that describes their product is easy. They follow the keep it simple systematically approach for their product. And to me, that means money. Money because there's no learning curve involved for understanding, nor expensive consultancy hour needed to deploy, install, configure, or even understand how the product works. They also have an excellent support team. It's remarkable how well you can work with them. They are very helpful at the beginning of your journey with web services, where other teams understand much more than you of that matter. And being a middleware focused company, it's pretty easy to talk with the designer, with the main programmer to discuss the roadmap, a new idea, enhancement, or problem you can have. That's all. That's the end of my presentation. You can contact me at that email. Feel free to do it. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Gustavo. You have Gustavo's contact information from the previous slide. If you'd like any more information on either of the NuWave products that we've talked about today, you can follow the links that are on your screen now, or you can contact us via support, or even email me or call me directly if you'd like any further information. And with that, I think we are open to questions. Thank you very much.